up, everyone? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 4 of the Patel and Kumar Show. I'm your host, Shiva Patel, coming to you live from San Antonio, Texas. And my co-host, Mr. Kumar, coming to you live from Mumbai, India. We're so happy to be back, and we have such an exciting show today. We have Lakers insider Eric Pincus is going to be joining us in a few minutes. But Mr. Kumar, what's up with you?
I'm all well here in Mumbai, and it's a nice chilly evening here. And I can't be more excited because it's the fourth episode of Season 2 of the Patel and Kumar NBA Talk Show. And of course, we have a very exciting guest, the Laker insider, Eric Pincus. And we are also going to pay whose death anniversary recently. And we're going to discuss some huge performances by LeBron James, Steph Curry. So let's get on with the show, Mr. Patel.
All right, let's get started. So that's a perfect segue. Let's talk about Mr. Kumar's favorite player, LeBron James. And LeBron James had 46 points in his homecoming back to Cleveland, Ohio. He was just playing unbelievable. He looked possessed, Mr. Kumar. And what a performance by LeBron James, especially on this road trip and showing out in front of the Cleveland fans.
Of course, I mean, it was all going well, till probably the third quarter. And then somebody from the crowd heckled him and he got really mad about it. And then, it was just him taking over that game. The virtuoso performance in his former home team. But that's what crowds can do to you, Some people get inspired by it. Some people get hit by it. But I think it's former for LeBron James, who ended up with 46 points and, of course, taking over that game. And, of course, he almost had a fantastic game against Philadelphia 76ers as well last night. That is today morning in India. But the Lakers just falling short. Road game of the season.
Right. They've been a lot better at home or on the road than at home, Mr. Kumar. You said that was their first road loss at home. They lost 4 games, but I think they're much more focused, on the road. On this road trip specifically, they played well against the Bucks, against the Bulls. Anthony Davis had a huge game, took care of business against the Cavs. They almost nearly lost against the Sixers, but they have a chance to avenge that loss against the Celtics. But yeah, I think the Lakers are much more focused, on the road, especially with no fans. And so I think the Lakers are a much better road team than a home team. And I think it showed early in the season.
Absolutely. But they just, after losing that game tonight, of course, they fall to second place in the Western Conference. And the Utah Jazz have been on a phenomenal run, winning 10 games in a row. And Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell have been just fantastic for the Utah Jazz. And, of course, even Jordan Clarkson, Jazz, and like a team to beat in the Western Conference. And hello to Joel Joseph. Welcome to the show.
What's up? Yeah, thank you everybody for tuning in. And if you have any comments, please put them in the chat section. They may appear live on the show, specifically, when Eric Pincus comes. So have your questions ready for Eric Pincus, who's going to be joining us in a few minutes. But yeah, speaking of the Jazz, Mr. Kumar, you're right. They've been the hottest team. I love the way they play. They play an up-tempo. They shoot a lot of threes. But they're not just a three-point shooting team. They play a lot of pick and roll with Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, and the defense can't leave the shooter, so that really opens up the paint for Rudy Gobert to just eat. Donovan Mitchell's been on a tear, whether it's driving to the basket, shooting threes. Jordan Clarkson, he just comes from the bench and just starts chunking threes. He's never met a shot that he doesn't like. So they have a great all-around team. Joe Ingles is a great defender. Bogdanovich is also a great shooter. So they have a very good all-around team. And I think, they had a great series last year against the Denver Nuggets, narrowly losing in 7 games. So let's see if the Utah Jazz could continue this pace in the regular season and maybe win a couple games in the playoffs.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a long way into the season. I think
Yeah.
we've only finished about 25% of the games so far. So yeah, I mean, a long way ahead for all the teams. But yeah, I mean, I think the Utah Jazz are getting into a rhythm, and so is the Los Angeles Lakers. Uh, and I mean, we don't expect both these teams not. Uh, but I think the Clippers also are pretty much there, and the Denver Nuggets are playing really well, especially Jokic has been phenomenal, putting up monster numbers.
Right, and the Clippers, Mr. Kumar, are flying under the radar. So, nobody's talking about them, but Paul George has quietly put together a nice MVP season. You're right, Jokic, his passing ability, he leads the NBA in assists as a 7-foot center. That's just awesome. I think he just has a great all-around game, and he's really fun to watch. But Mr. Kumar, what about Steph Curry scoring having a huge game? I believe he had 36 points against the Timberwolves, making 7 3-pointers, and he's really going to have to carry this Warriors team to the playoffs, put the entire team on his back.
Past Reggie Miller last week in the all-time, 3-point made, 3-point field goal statistic. Team depends on Steph Curry. Steph Curry has to pretty much play like this day in and day out if he has to carry this Warriors team. Of course, they have some good support team in Eric Pascal, in James Wiseman, and other players. But still, I think, we don't know whether Steph Curry can really do this every single night. And that's the only problem for.
Right, and Draymond Green has come back from injury, so that's helped, Steph Curry a little bit. But you're right. The defense completely focuses on Steph in their scouting report. Try to wear him out as much as possible on the offensive end, work hard for his points, go after him on the defensive end. So those other players are going to have to step up, Right now they have, Draymond Green who's going to have to continue to make shots. Eric Pascal, who had a good rookie season, is going to have to step up. Oubre and Wiggins, they played a little better than they played in the beginning of the season, but they're going to need more from those guys. Those guys cannot just be 3-and-D players. They need to score on the offensive end because you need points, especially when you're going against these high-level teams. Right now, both me and Mr. Kumar projected the Warriors to make the playoffs. It's kind of iffy right now. I believe they're just at the tail end of the Western Conference, but we'll see what happens. It's all going to be on the broad shoulders of Steph Curry, Mr. Kumar.
Absolutely. I think enough about the West. I think what's more exciting for me is the East. The
Eastern Conference.
Yeah, it's not the Eastern Conference anymore. It is not, especially after you have the big trio of James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant playing for the Brooklyn Nets. And of course, Philadelphia 76ers have been phenomenal as well this season. They've had a good start. Hopefully they carry the momentum as well.
Mm-hmm.
With a new coach, with a new system. So, and they won probably the top team.
Yeah, they did win against, the top team, in the Los Angeles Lakers. But the Sixers have been my surprise team. Right now, a lot of people projected them to be 5th or 6th, the East, but they're coming in at number 1. I just love the way that the system that Doc Rivers has implemented, using Ben Simmons more downhill as well as Tobias Harris. They've really played through Embiid in the post. They have him in the block, and he either he reads the defense. If there's a double team, then he kicks it out to the shooters and Seth Curry and Danny Green. If it's 1-on-1, he attacks. He's shooting less threes, attacking the basket more. The Sixers are a very potent defensive team. So I love the Sixers team, and I think this team has a great chance to make noise in the Eastern Conference, and I think they're better than the Bucks. So I think right now the top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference have to be the Sixers and the Nets right now, Mr. Kumar.
Well, I think it's pretty much certain the top 4 teams are going to be the Philadelphia 76ers. The Milwaukee Bucks are also right up there. They have, after a very slow start, they finally found some rhythm in their game, especially with Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton and Giannis playing really well. Of course, the Brooklyn Nets are going to be up there. I'm really surprised. The way the Atlanta Hawks are playing, they're playing great basketball. And of course, the Washington Wizards and the other teams have had a lot of casualty in terms of COVID protocols. They have had to miss a lot of games. But at the end of the day, I mean, Cavs have been good. They've, of course, beat the Nets. But, Joel, I don't think the Cavs are right up there. And there's a lot of rumors also going around in terms of trade talks, in terms of probably fishing out, Kevin Love and other players. So it remains to be seen what happens before the All-Star break, before the free agency deadline hits the market. So, for me, it's been the top four teams like Sixers, the Bucks, the Nets, and the Boston Celtics.
Yeah, I think that's a good top four right now. Those teams that kind of separated themselves. Yeah, speaking of the Cavs, they did. Colin Sexton played with his hair was on fire against the Nets, completely dominating Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden. So I think that Cavs have a bright future, but right now, they're not going to be in contention, for a playoff spot. Or maybe they will be in contention for a playoff spot, but not a championship, contender. But Mr. Kumar, speaking of the Brooklyn Nets. Right now, they had a nice win against the Atlanta Hawks, last night. So they're still trying to get adjusted. They ended up beating the Heat twice. I know the Heat have been having a lot of injuries. But what have you seen so far from this Brooklyn Nets big three? Have you seen them mesh together well, Mr. Kumar, or they're still going to have to figure it out?
I think they still have to figure it out, especially defensively, because they don't have a really good bench out there. And, of course, only 34% of our audience thinks that they're going to win a championship.
I'm part of that 34%.
Well, I mean, you've been calling out the Nets even before the Harden trade happened. So I'll give you props for that, because nobody expected. I mean, well, people did expect it, but nobody thought that it would happen so soon. But they played a great game against the Hawks. They lost one game, and then, of course, they won the second game in overtime. So there's still some experimenting that needs to be done by Steve Nash.
Right.
A lot of work on defense. They did hold the Miami Heat to just 85 points, but that was without Duncan Robinson. Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler. So once they come back in, it becomes a little bit more difficult. And of course, Bam Adebayo has been amazing as well.
Right. And, the Nets, they struggle with defense. Exactly. They also struggle with rebounding. They get out rebounded a lot. A lot of teams have second chance opportunities because DeAndre Jordan is really the only center. It almost came back to bite them last night against the Hawks, but they made enough defensive plays down the stretch to be able to get that win. Kevin Durant had a nice weak side block on John Collins. They really bottled up Trae Young and threw a lot of multiple defenders at him. But on the offensive end, I noticed towards the end of games, specifically in the fourth quarter, Harden has the ball in his hands a lot, and he's tasked with either playmaking or finding a shot for himself. But in the overtime, Kevin Durant started to demand the ball a little bit more, and he started to become aggressive and going towards the ball. So they're still trying to figure out. It's still a your turn, my turn kind of thing. But Kevin Durant had a huge game with 32 points. James Harden had 31 points, and Kyrie Irving had 26 points. And that'll work, Mr. Kumar. And even Bruce Brown came in from the bench and had 11 points. So if their bench continues to improve and gain confidence, in addition to the stars playing well, I think this Nets team is going to be really tough to beat.
You can't expect the Nets bench to score more than 20 points. That's how the team is designed. I mean, you would expect pretty much 90% of the points being scored by the big three, which is Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. And any additional points that comes in from the supporting cast, it's all going to be bonus. And that's the only way that probably they can beat the opponents is by outscoring them. So uh, not only I mean, I know that we're stressing much on defense, but I think in the case of the Brooklyn Nets, it's going to be like just outshoot your opponent. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can get about 55-60% of your field goals, you're going to be right up there.
Right, but as you know, Mr. Kumar, that's a little bit tough because that puts a lot of strain as a team where you're pressured to make those shots because if you can't stop anybody, right now they couldn't stop a parked car. But they've improved a little bit. Steve Nash has put more emphasis on the defensive end. Hitesh, thank you for watching. And he's asking, do you think Brooklyn will reach the finals, specifically with how good Philadelphia and other teams are playing? Right now, Brooklyn Nets have to be the favorite. But right now, Mr. Kumar, in the East, I think Brooklyn Nets are 1A, but Philadelphia is not far. They're like a 1B. It can go either way if they play in a series. It'll depend on who has home court advantage because last year the Sixers only lost like one game at home, and this year they've been pretty dominant at home also. So I think the Sixers and the Nets are very close together, Mr. Kumar, especially if the Sixers pull off a trade in the trade deadline for Bradley Beal, add another shooter. They would be a serious contender.
I see a very remote possibility of Bradley Beal going to the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, that's going to be a huge shakedown again in a team which is pretty much set. They're playing well, and they've been doing very good defensively as well. Especially, I mean, it's very tough for a team like Brooklyn Nets to stop somebody like a Joel Embiid. They don't really have that manpower to do it.
Yeah.
Of course, Brooklyn lacks serious depth and have chemistry issues, but they will overcome that chemistry issues pretty soon.
Yeah.
Hitesh, I know if you were the GM of a team, probably you would trade Kyrie for that depth. But I think I wouldn't do that because I think, as in my opinion, 30 points each. That if you average 30 points for the big three, the chances of you winning the game are pretty high.
They really are, but they're still going to have to figure out their pecking order, specifically at the end of games, who's going to be their closer. And their closer should be Kevin Durant, Mr. Kumar. He's the best player on the team. He closed twice in the 2017 and 2018 NBA Finals. James Harden has shown that he really can't close a lot of games. He struggled with that in Houston. So I think Kevin Durant needs to demand the ball more in the fourth quarter and take that final shot because he'll always make the right play, Mr. Kumar, whether it's for himself or for his teammates. But I love what Harden is doing so far. He's been, I think, better than I expected. He has a great balance of when to know when to shoot and then when to play make. So his playmaking ability is incredible. And it's all about winning for this team. It's a championship or bust season, for the Brooklyn Nets. And Joel's asking, how about the rookies this year, LaMelo and Wiseman? So what do you think about the rookies, Mr. Kumar, and their performances so far?
In my honest opinion, I think Wiseman has been better than LaMelo.
I agree.
The only, in fact, even Halliburton for the Sacramento Kings, is right up there, in terms of winning the Rookie of the Year. I don't think LaMelo, has really performed great in terms of the rookies. The only reason being is that, people think that he is the Rookie of the Year only because it's all a media hype. The media thinks that LaMelo, is probably going to win the Rookie of the Year, and the betting circles also project him as the top odds to win the Rookie of the Year. But for me, I think the James Wiseman has been a better contributor for a team like the Golden State Warriors.
I agree. James Wiseman he's come in and played really well. He's a back to the basket big, but he's shown incredible shooting touch, from the mid range, from three. He could space the floor. He runs the floor like a deer. He's really fast. He can block shots on the defensive end or change shots. Right now, it's tough for LaMelo because he's coming off the bench. And you can still see that Coach Borrego still doesn't have complete confidence in him. He's only playing like 20 to 25 minutes a night, Mr. Kumar. And there's been some Hornets fans saying that he should start over Devontae Graham because Devontae Graham has really been struggling. But right now, James Wiseman is competing, on a better team. And I think I had to give the edge to Wiseman overall. So I agree with you. And this doesn't happen much, ladies and gentlemen. Me and Mr. Kumar actually agree on something. So it was a great start to the show, Mr. Kumar.
It is. I think it's a great start for the year as well. But of course, we're going to be joined by Eric Pincus from Bleacher Report, who's a Laker insider. And so we would like to, of course, I mean, he will join us pretty soon, and we are very excited to have him. So thank you very much for joining us, Eric Pincus. But I mean, as we rightly said, I mean, it's very hard to agree on some things, but I think looking at the play that's happening so far, I think James Wiseman is my pick for the Rookie of the Year.
Right. And, James Wiseman has played really well. He's contributed early. Halliburton's played really well. But Anthony Edwards has been kind of on and off. But if Wiseman can continue to play at this level and not hit the rookie wall, and he's going to get minutes because the Warriors need that interior presence, I have to go with, James Wiseman as an early Rookie of the Year. But let's see. If LaMelo starts putting together some good performances, as Mr. Kumar rightly said, the media will hype him up, because he's the ball brother. But we'll see. I think LaMelo ultimately has a higher ceiling. But this year, I think James Wiseman has been the better player. But Mr. Kumar, as we transition, unfortunately, this week we had the anniversary of Kobe's tragic passing away. Him and 9 other people passed away in a helicopter accident, and we want to show a Kobe tribute video and is in commemoration for Kobe Bryant. So please play the video.
తొందర క్లారిటీగా పన్నది స్లోగా తీరాలి ఎలా రా మందిరా వీడియో పాడాలి.
And please welcome Los Angeles Lakers lead writer Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report, and also senior basketball writer for Basketball Insiders, to the Patel and Kumar show. So Eric, welcome to the show. So I wanted to ask you about the legacy, of Kobe Bryant. So what are your thoughts, having covered him, for multiple years? So right now we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with Eric Pincus, so he'll be back very soon. But Mr. Kumar, we welcome back Eric.
Try that again.
And can you hear us?
Yes.
There you go. There.
I got better.
Yes, it's a lot better.
Yes.
My mic wasn't turned on.
No problem.
Sorry, guys. My bad. That was on my end.
No
there's a button I have to press, and if I don't press it, the mic doesn't work. So go figure. I'll say that again. I started covering the Lakers in the early 2000s around. I guess it was actually the year that Karl Malone and Gary Payton were on the Lakers. So if you know your Laker history, you have the context. And I obviously there was a lot of attention on Kobe, and it was certainly interesting to get to know him over time, especially as the team kind of they won, and then they lost for a little bit. They didn't make the playoffs. They were pretty lousy. Kobe demanded a trade. There were all this drama, and then they got back to the top. So I got to know him around that time, and then all the way through kind of his adulthood and tearing his Achilles and retiring, and a little bit after he retired, I got to talk to him 2 or 3 times. So it was wonderful to see him grow up, because I started watching the Lakers when, way before he got there, but when he was an 18-year-old kid, and to see his life's journey, it still hurts a lot. It's a year after. I was more emotional the other day. Throughout the year, there would be waves of emotion. It's tough when you lose anybody, but he was someone who meant a lot to the world. He was someone who was very kind. He was, he would challenge you, and you would have to challenge back a little bit. He was not somebody who would let you walk over him. He had a strong personality, but he always took the time to answer questions, win or lose. He was someone who I really admired. So it's still a tough loss, for sure.
I mean, before, and that was India, so it just shows you like the kind of influence, a player like Kobe Bryant has on the lives of so many people, not just in the United States, over the world. And, rest in peace, Gianna and Kobe.
Yeah, absolutely. Losing his daughter. I have 3 daughters, and I've coached each one of them at the rec league level, playing basketball. Kobe and I had that in common. We talked a lot about our situations as girl dads, because he had, I guess it's sad to say in past tense, 4 daughters, and we had a very similar life. In a lot of ways, certainly not. Obviously, I'm 5'7" and not very good at basketball, although I love the game and I can coach the game. Actually playing it, not so much. And we had different means. I do well considering the world, and I can't complain, but obviously don't have the means of someone like Kobe Bryant financially. But that doesn't change our humanity and that we share common bonds, and that was something that I really treasured with Kobe. Was that common understanding? We were the same. Just like any father of multiple daughters will tell you, there are certain things that that you live through that are wonderful and challenging, and so Kobe and I had that in common. So we enjoyed that.
Right, and it was really sad because he was really starting to, become at peace with, with his life. Before his passing, he had a great second career as a storyteller. He even won an Oscar, for a short story, and he was going to do amazing things, in his second career. And it's just sad that his life, ended really too soon, because the amount of people that he impacted all over the world is just really incredible.
Right, and his impact in his passing. Obviously there are philosophical, metaphysical, religious, and whatever it is spiritual that you believe in. His impact on the world is felt in his passing, and losing his daughter is the tougher part. But they mean a lot symbolically to the world, and in this world, the NBA world. I mean, they still cast the both of them a massive, shadow or light, however you want to term it.
Right.
Absolutely. But just to turn things around, first of all, namaste from India, Eric. Thank you for joining us. A lot of people watching the show would definitely like to hear more about you. But we pretty much 13th man in the Lakers organization, because you know more about the Lakers than probably maybe even Jeannie Buss. But but in any case,
I would never say
that. But tell me, I mean, probably your most memorable story from the Lakers for so many years.
Well, I mean, there are so many. I mean, really, just little things of being in the building for the first time at Staples Center for me meant a lot. That was something that I realized that I was an opportunity that I could take advantage of, that there was a job where you can go to basketball games and get paid to be there when I was already paying to go. So, the memories for, it's almost 20 years, right around 20 years, I guess 19 years, something like that, are there's so many. And a lot of it, I would say the most important ones are probably the personal relationships I've made throughout, be it with people, other media members, people who work at the Staples Center, not even necessarily for the Lakers, people in and around the Lakers organization, including the players. All that is, it's treasured memories. The most significant moment probably that I covered was when Kobe tore his Achilles. That to me, that was, it was surreal. He had gotten hurt multiple times in that game, and it just felt like something was happening that was kind of out of all of our control. And then he went down, and he was clearly hurt. And then he shot his free throws, and then left, and it was clear that something bad, was. And then the news came out that it was the Achilles. And in the NBA, I guess there are worse injuries technically, but as far as normal injuries, that's probably the worst one. ACLs are bad, but modern technology has really helped players get through that. But after an Achilles in their mid-30s, it was questionable if we'd ever see Kobe play again. And so I went into the locker room after the game, and I remember someone asked me, is Kobe going to talk? And I said, no. Why would he talk? It doesn't make sense because players talk after a game, and Kobe almost, probably 99.9% of the time, or maybe even 100% of the time, spoke to the media. But if you're injured, you have no obligation to talk to the media. Like if you got to go rush off, to the hospital and have surgery in the morning, like I was like, don't talk to us. But because I was, I guess, a veteran at that point, he came out of the locker room on crutches, and I knew where he was going to go to because I just had a gut feeling. So it wasn't quite at his locker. It was next to his locker, closer to the shower. And I made a beeline to where he was going before he got there, which is a defensive principle in basketball, by the way, right? That's like the idea. And so I was like right dead front and center, and he came over, and this at the time, I think it was Time Warner cable, which is now Spectrum, but the Lakers network, their cameraman was directly behind me, and because I beat them to the spot, but because I figured that the world needed to see Kobe on Spectrum, the Lakers station, or Time Warner, and not the back of my head. I got down on one knee and looked up because it was, that's not an uncommon thing where you're in a scrum with a heap of reporters piling on top of each other. Although in this modern era, that's certainly something we don't do anymore. But in that, so I on one knee with my recorder, and he had tears. You could tell that he wasn't crying then, but his eyes had been, he had clearly been crying. And he talked, and I asked him that question, which I could hear not just, in my head, but I guess it was in my head, but it was what I felt like everybody was thinking. That's my responsibility. So I asked him, would we ever see, is this the last time we've ever seen Kobe Bryant play basketball? And he looked down at me with scorn, and he said something like, it's appropriate that I'm down on my knees when I ask a question like that, or something. It was kind of spiteful, angry, but humorous, and I didn't take any offense by it. But that's my job. Is a lot of the time I don't have to ask difficult questions, but there are times that I do, and it's my responsibility to step into that. And just like Kobe Bryant would step into a shot, about taking a shot at the end of the game, hit the game winner, miss the game winner. Your job is to take that shot. and it's a different responsibility. It's a different line of work, but it's related and it's similar. So I did what I did. I asked what I asked. People got a laugh out of his response. And of course, we saw Kobe come back, and he was never quite the same, although we got that classic final performance where he scored 60, which was truly memorable. And one of my great,
that was so legendary.
it was ridiculous. And one of the great things about that moment was how, as a reporter, you're not supposed to celebrate the moment. You're supposed to be very serious and not like cheer. And I'm good at it. It's like I cheer at my kids' games. Right, when my girls are playing, I cheer, and if I'm not coaching, if I'm coaching, I don't cheer. But if I'm in the sideline, I cheer and I yell. I don't do that at NBA games anymore. It's been sucked out of me professionally, but in that moment, it was fun looking at my colleagues just flat out like forgetting their professionalism and celebrating that moment. And it doesn't matter if you're a Laker fan in that moment. That was a celebration of life. And so, those great memories of Kobe, and just to finish the story is that, a couple of years later, he did something for Showtime. I think it was called Muse, where he did his autobiography. Mm-hmm. And it was, a documentary. And I got to go to the premiere of that. I don't know if it was the premiere or if it was a showing for the media, but Jeannie Buss was there, and believe me, Jeannie knows a lot more than I'm good at. Maybe I can argue that I know the salary cap in more detail than Jeannie Buss. Anything else? No, I'm not going to claim that at all. She's a legend, and I have great respect for her leadership, especially as a woman in this field, which is a minority, and she's look at the job she's doing right now. So it's she's a great example for this world, and I'm happy for her success. But at this premiere, I talked to Kobe, and I said, "Did you want to kick my rear?" And I used different language when I asked that question. He said, he said in so many words that it was not an easy question to ask, but it was important. So they used that clip, or at least my voice, because you can't see me because I'm kneeling down in the documentary, and it started a whole chapter point within his documentary, within the show. Would he ever play again? And so that's an honor for me to be, even if you don't see my face. I was there. I asked that question. It's immortalized in audio form. I have that memory of looking up to him from one knee that I'll never forget. And losing him, it makes it harder. But I know that there are people who are devastated around the world who didn't get to talk to him, didn't get to know him a little bit more. I know a lot of people knew him a lot better than I did. Certainly his family, who lost way more than I ever did in this. But still, to be around that and to be a part of that is something I'll always treasure.
Right. And that's pretty incredible that you were there, especially when that moment happened, when he tore his Achilles. That was such a big moment, for him coming back, whether he's going to, be done with basketball or whether he's going to fight to come back. And he did fight to come back and put that legendary 60-point game, which we all know that Kobe had in him. So it was a pretty incredible to see. So, Eric, I wanted to ask you, what tips do you have, for people looking to, become an insider and people that are looking to, be in your position?
Well, I mean, it's kind of two questions is, how do you get in this position? And that's difficult. It's a challenge. And then how do you, I don't necessarily use the word insider myself, but how do you get to a point where you really is how can you get to a point where you have relationships with people who have information, who are willing to trust you with that information, trust their privacy, because in certain cases, and probably most cases, or certainly a lot of cases, they could be fired for sharing certain information. That's not across the board, but people who share information can't put their name on it for a reason. And in the case of if someone works for a team, they could be fined, or even, like I said, they could be censured, punished by the league, by the team. And it's not like anyone's sharing like state national secrets that will cause life or death situations. But to the first part of the question, obviously there are not a lot of opportunities to get in the building. You have to be in an NBA city or move to an NBA city. You have to have an outlet that the NBA will credential, the team will credential. So you have to work for that outlet. I started in the early days of the internet as far as social media, and I had started writing. And my first advice to anybody who wants to do this is to really just start writing. And there are so many forms, be it blogs or you could stream and create a YouTube stream, Twitch, all the different platforms, or you can write wherever you can find work. And then as you develop your skills and become, it's not an easy process learning to write and write quickly and succinctly so that it's clear and it's short. It could be long words, and some writers make a career out of long story. Bill Simmons is really, really good at what he does. And when he's written, he writes a lot of words, and usually that's not how you're going to start. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You want to be clear, concise, and then offer a point of view that maybe others aren't presenting. And that doesn't mean you need to be wholly unique, but and then from there you need to find a job, find someone who will, even if it's an internship. I mean, when I started, it wasn't called an internship, but I wasn't really, maybe I would get $35 a month in the early days for writing, in the very beginning. And eventually it started to pay, a few hundred or whatever it was. And then over time, I took, I wrote for Hoops World, which is defunct, but is now really what Basketball Insiders became. I got a job with the Los Angeles Times, and that took 2 interviews over a 2-year period, where the first interview I didn't get the job, and then 2 years later the same position opened up and I did. And some of that involved just kind of the merging of the question, which is I don't want to say I was an insider or whatever with the LA Times, but at that point I had relationships with multiple people in the LA Times who fought for me from the inside to get that position, and that I wouldn't have gotten that position 100%. I know exactly what was going to happen before a couple of friends with the paper fought to get me in, and the editor reconsidered his decision and they hired me. And then from there, I moved on to Bleacher Report, where I still am. And but the insider part of it, you do all those things, and you're lucky enough to get in the building. And to be honest, there are people who write professionally who aren't in the building, who are able to establish themselves for what they can do, what they can bring to the game. So it's not 100% a requirement. Obviously, it's a different aspect of it, but being there helped me meet people. And then it's not like a selfish thing where I'm meeting people to get information from them. I'm just making friends over many years and being responsible, being a good person. I try to be friendly it's not even try. To me, the world is a better place if we're all just generally kind to each other. I know that sounds outrageous. And in this world, especially in our country, where what we've gone through over the last several years, where we have, great division among philosophies or whatever. And I don't want to get into that aspect of it. My point of view is just be kind, say yes more than no. Try not to say no when you can avoid it, unless it's harmful. Generally speaking, treat someone like you would want to be treated. And if someone is sharing something with you that's sensitive, then you keep it sensitive. And if someone says, I'll ask somebody, hey, I'm writing on this person, can I get your point of view? And they know I'm going to write on it, but I'm not going to use their name. If I'm going to use their name, I'll say, can I use your name? And they'll say yes, or they'll say no. And if the answer is no, that's fine. It's not an insult to me. And I have to respect. There are times I might reach out to somebody who's connected to something and they won't respond. And I have to not take it personally and understand maybe it's sensitive. One last little tidbit is, generally speaking, if I have a friend with a team, I generally don't ask that friend about what their team is doing, because that's more sensitive.
Yeah.
That's where they could get into more concrete trouble for leaking their news. And the last thing I want to do is gum up
Get him in trouble.
my friend's situation. Right. And then additionally, To me, breaking a story, I've broken stories throughout the years, plenty. Most people don't remember who broke a story. They do remember who got things wrong. If you broke something wrong, they remember who messed that up. But and you know, I messed up one or two along the way. You know, fortunately, it's been a while, and the worst I had done was in my very early days, which taught me how to be more responsible, yeah, and understand that even those who are you could Jeannie Buss would be an example. I could ask Jeannie Buss a question, not to say that she would answer. I'm just saying her theoretically. If you ask Jeannie Buss or Mark Cuban or if you want a general manager or vice president of operations, like you go to Danny Ainge or whoever, and you ask them a direct question, not in real life, I'm just saying theoretically, and they gave you an answer that was 100% true. Yeah, we're going to trade this player for this. That doesn't mean that's going to happen because trades fall apart. And so you can go to the horse's mouth and get 100% factual truth, report it, and be 100% wrong. And it's not that you're not right. It was going to happen, but it didn't happen. And those examples of those names are just me nonsense. But examples of how it works. So for me, breaking stories is not as much the goal. So if someone gives me something, I'm not going to rush to be the first. I'd rather know what's going on, have intelligent background to what it is that I'm writing. In theory, sourced information that represents the truth of what's going on, but not saying this is going to happen as much as, this is where teams are and we'll see where they go.
Right.
And I'm not going to rush to get something out so I get a headline and then get a bunch of clicks right away, when I'd rather just have years of quality work. And that's my approach. And that's, it's not going to work for everyone. And I have great respect for guys like Shams Charania and Adrian Wojnarowski and others in our field who are the top of the news breaking aspect of our business. And they do great work. And I can only imagine how hard and complex and lengthy their relationship building time is spent, because they clearly have relationships across the gamut of people who go to them first with breaking stuff. And I know there are people who go to me first when it comes to complex salary cap stuff. That's not for everyone. That's what I love, and that's
You're the expert in salary caps.
One of them anyway, and that's what my audience really appreciates. And it's not going to be the audience of the masses of NBA fans who, if there's millions who follow this, maybe there's if there's a few 100,000, I'll take it and be happy with those who appreciate what I appreciate.
But I know Hitesh Ranglani was one of our audience who really liked whatever you said, and he was like, if working for NBA or basketball would be probably his dream job. Who's going? Do you think Kobe Bryant is in the Mount Rushmore of NBA?
Well, let's see. In Mount Rushmore, there are only 4 faces.
No,
so
he's asking Lakers. Mount Rushmore of Lakers basketball.
Well, Lakers basketball. Of course.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, obviously. Magic, Kobe. You probably do Jerry West because of he's the one who got Shaq and Kobe to the Lakers. He's the one who got the Lakers their first championship in LA. Of course, if you really go back far enough, you put George Mikan on. If you want to really represent the eras, it's probably George Mikan, Jerry West, Magic Johnson, and then Kobe. And then you have to kick out one of those for LeBron. So, if that means George Mikan goes, then George Mikan goes.
You also missed out Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Right. And if you ask me who was the more important basketball player on the court, it might be Kareem over Magic. I mean, if you really look at the history of it, at the same time, if you're talking about the first half of the 80s, that's the answer. But if you're talking the second half of the 80s, then it's Magic. But Magic's personality and what he meant to the NBA, the NBA struggled through the 1970s. It was fledgling. And then you had the Magic Bird era. And so much of that was built on the charisma Magic Johnson, not just his personality, which is off the charts with charisma, but also the way he played with that flair. He popularized the game. He nationalized it. It became, I know football is probably the number one American sport, and baseball is the American pastime. But it put the NBA in that conversation. And I think Michael Jordan, the next decade, globalized it and made it a world sport. Maybe more than American football, maybe more than baseball. It became, as your audience will know, it's. I mean, there are different sports in different countries, from cricket to things I don't know anything about. But the NBA is massive, and it doesn't get there where Michael Jordan put it without Magic, and then Kobe carried on that legacy. And look, if you see the video or the pictures of Kobe, I guess video is the best. Kobe going to China for the Olympics, and the crowd, massive crowd. LeBron was reported, I forget who reported it or what the exact quote was, but something along the lines of him saying that he thought he was famous until that moment with Kobe, when he saw how famous Kobe was. And what LeBron's doing with his career and what he's doing with his life is, as a leader and really in a lot of ways a humanitarian. I have a great respect for what he's doing. He's carrying forward these great legacies. It's hard to say for, if you drop off someone, Jerry West is with the Clippers, so you drop off Jerry West, and if you want to act for him, that's fine. Shaq played for too many teams. It's tough to narrow it to four. Certainly Kobe, certainly Magic. LeBron has only been a Laker this is just the third season, so I would say if you really want to place LeBron on there, he's got to win 3 with the Lakers. I don't know if that is enough.
I mean, that's because that's a good criteria to have.
Because all those other guys have won multiple championships, with the Lakers.
Magic won 5, Kobe won 5, Shaq won 3 with the Lakers, 4 overall, but 3. Yeah. LeBron has 1, and that's compared to most teams that don't get 1. You have your teams that do, your Celtics and the Warriors and the Bulls, and the Heat got a few, Spurs. Who else did I leave out? Maybe the Sixers have won more than 1. Not many teams have won even more than 1, right? The Pistons have won more than 1.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where, the Laker fans are spoiled, and in part the reason why they are so massive in numbers is because the team has won so much. So I don't know what LeBron's going to do this year, if they're going to win this year or not. They're obviously one of the favorites. It will be difficult for them to do so. And then looking into the future beyond that, who knows? But he's got to get to 3 if you really want to say the Mount Rushmore of Lakers.
Yeah. And speaking of LeBron, India super fan Bhushan Suravansky, who's a huge Lakers fan, he's asking what would be the best time for LeBron to retire. As fans, we don't want to see LeBron retiring with an injury.
Well, I would say the most likely scenario, who knows if it's likely, I guess the dream scenario is the best way to put it, for LeBron is to play with his son. That's what he's expressed.
Yeah.
Bronny or LeBron James Jr. We don't know if he's NBA caliber. He's still a sophomore in high school. He needs to grow a little bit, and his game needs to grow. And you can imagine that even if he was a second-round pick, that teams would be clamoring to get him if it meant that they could also get LeBron at the minimum, if that's what LeBron wants to play with his son. So I don't think, the rules as they are now, you have to go to college for a year. So you have his junior year, his senior year, and 1 year of college. So like 3 years before he's even in the league. So, or if they change the rules, which they might, there was some momentum to change the rules to get rid of one and done before, the shutdown. And I don't think it's top burner. I don't think that's the priority right now. So maybe 3 years. I think LeBron certainly, he's under contract for, about that. He's got 2 more years after this. I'd have to double check. I've lost track.
Player option, yeah.
Right. So we'll see he doesn't have a player option now that I think about it. I'll pull it up. But basically, I think you want to hope that he doesn't have what happened to Kobe, that he doesn't have a massive injury. Yeah, LeBron has 3 years. He's through 2023. So, the way Kobe went out was spectacular in his own way. But most superstars have a devastating injury at some point and are trying to carry their game forward and don't retire in time and have a few years where they're not quite as good. Some retire early. Jordan retired early, came back. A guy like Larry Bird had a couple of down years. I'm trying to think of who's a good example. I mean, there are players who retired early. You would hope LeBron continues and stays healthy the way he's playing right now. I don't think he's the athlete he was in his first 5 to 8 years of his career, but he's still, an absolute elite monster of an athlete. And then what's grown in his game is his ability to, see the floor, see the game. He always could do that, but it's at a higher level now. So
Yeah,
he is, seeing him up close, he's as good as anybody I've seen. I've seen some great players. I've seen Kobe and Shaq in their prime. I've seen Jordan play. I've seen Magic play in person. I've seen Kareem, although I was pretty young when Kareem played. These are some of the best players of all time, and LeBron is absolutely among that. So hopefully that will carry forward up until his early 40s or as long as he wants to play.
right.
Yeah. And Shazam, we will get to all these questions because we are going to have a rapid fire round with Eric Pincus, of course, with a lot of questions in that segment. But before we move on to the Indian Tadka section, Eric, it's the spiciest section of not only our show, but I think it's the
On
spiciest
YouTube.
section on YouTube.
But welcome to the Indian Third segment, the spiciest segment on YouTube, and we have Eric Pincus here, so it's getting even more spicier. So Eric, I wanted to ask you, do you have any inside information on when the Lakers are going to be coming to India?
Well, I don't know about inside information. I will say that the situation, the worldwide situation, has really kind of hurt the plans. I know that NBA India is something very important to the league. It's something that they've invested a lot of time, money, and resources into. And every year, teams, well, except this year, every normal year, teams are traveling for preseason games overseas. They've done China, they've done even actual games during the season in Mexico City. That's a very, very important goal for the NBA, and NBA India is a huge part of that. And the Lakers, being what they are, I can guarantee would be one of those teams headed to India in the first 3 years of whatever it was that is happening. Teams usually get a year off. So if you go 1 year, the next year you don't go overseas, and then the year after you do. So I don't have a timeline because international travel is a problem. So you tell me when the world is back to normal, and then give it a 3-year window after that. And I think you'll maybe it's closer to 5 now because we're sort of set back. So within 5 years, I'd hope that you'll get a chance. Hopefully LeBron will still be LeBron at that point. Maybe you'll have Bronny on the team as well.
Bronny and LeBron,
There you go.
father-son duo.
Can you at least guarantee us that you would put in a word to Jeannie Buss and Rob Pelinka that the Patel and Kumar NBA talk show is really wanting the Lakers to be in India for the... So, of course, we had the NBA India Games was hosted for the first time in India. We had an NBA exhibition game between the Indiana Pacers and the Sacramento Kings. We have it this year because to make is you're going to go get this message across to Jeannie Buss and Rob Pelinka.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I can't promise anything, but I'll certainly, if it crosses my desk and I have an opportunity to talk to someone and just throw out there, I'll certainly do it. I can't promise any result, and I don't exactly have Jeannie Buss or Rob Plinka on my phone right now. They're very busy and busy running a franchise, but maybe maybe I'll get the word out at some point.
Yeah, maybe like a hallway talk. Just
There you go. Well, I have to get.
Yeah,
have to get in a hallway with them first, and we just, there are no hallways right now, so I'm at home.
This is a quick word. Hey, Patel and Kumar said, "Jake, come to India."
Okay, I'll work on it. Maybe. All right, you got it. I'll do it. We'll see.
Okay, so we're gonna have a very quick rapid fire round. We'd like you to be like totally honest as far as possible. I know we're gonna probably try and put you in a fix in some of the questions, but nevertheless, well, LeBron or MJ?
At this point, it is neck and neck. I still think that you go with 6 championships. You have to go with Michael Jordan for now. Give me another year or two. And this is a very different question, especially if LeBron wins 1 more. It's a very different question. LeBron wins 2 more. You're going to go with LeBron based on longevity. Michael did not do what LeBron has done over this period of time. Michael Jordan's career was relatively short comparatively. So that's going to be the difference. LeBron will pass MJ if he wins 1 or 2 more. I haven't decided if it's 1 or 2 yet. We'll revisit when after that.
So we have a little friendly competition, Eric. I'm a MJ guy. Of course, Mr. Kumar is a LeBron guy. So we always ask our guests, LeBron or MJ. So I'm glad right now he's siding with me, but we'll see what happens in a couple of years and after a couple more championships. But Eric, greatest Laker. If you had to choose one Laker that you would, want to win a game with, like your life depends on it, which Laker would you choose?
I mean, you'd win or lose with Kobe. And obviously there's the sentimental value, but I still, even before he passed, had him atop the list. Magic was amazing. Kareem is a legend. Shaq was overpowering. LeBron and right now is amazing. Jerry West doesn't have a great finals record, so he's out. George Mikan was perfect. Every time he went to the finals, he won. But I'll go with Kobe.
Okay. Who do you think are the better duo? Magic Kareem, Kobe Shaq, or LeBron and Anthony Davis?
I mean, sentimentally, it would be Kobe Shaq, but reality is that the Magic Kareem was more dominant for a longer period of time. If you look to how many times they went to the finals over that period, I mean, it was like 8 times, was it, in 10 years or 11 years, something like that? I mean, you can't argue. LeBron AD is an unwritten story. We don't have enough information to make that claim. They're 100%. So by percentage, they're number 1. But the proven reality is Magic and Kareem.
All right. And what about the better Lakers team? The 86 Lakers or the 2000 Lakers? The Showtime or the Kobe Shaq?
Definitely 86 over 2000. Now, if you want to say 2001, now we have a debate. That was the team that went and lost 1 game in the finals.
Yeah.
And that team, because in that first year, that Laker team did not know how to win yet. They figured it out as they went and barely got it done. The Pacers gave them some scares. The Blazers took them to the precipice of disaster. Shaq had never won and was someone who was considered somebody who would never win. It's easy you look at players right now and you say, James Harden will never win. Some people will say that. His style of play doesn't translate and he'll never win. Well, if he wins, now we need to rewrite that story. And that's who Shaq was in that era. He was somebody who was never going to win. And then he won. And so I don't think that Laker team could have learned how to do that against that Laker 86 dominant team. But the next year, that would be amazing to see. So the physical dominance of Shaq versus Kareem, but Kareem with the skyhook, it would be fun to see. If you could, alternate realities, actually see that would be something.
Okay. So last Laker-based question is, who was the better coach, Pat Riley or Phil Jackson?
Well, I think you got to go by overall career. So if you say Laker coach or if you say overall coach, I mean, Phil Jackson's track record with the Bulls, and then the Lakers, and then the Lakers a second time. I think you overall say Phil. Riley's impact on the game is amazing. What he's done with Miami, he's won championships there. So if you take Riley as an overall force, it's a little more even-handed, right? Because he has those rings with Miami that he didn't. He only got so many in LA. I love what Pat Riley did and what he represented. I met him as a kid at a clothing store in Beverly Hills. my folks were getting me a suit. I was probably 12, and he was at the store. It was Rudnick's or something like that. It's long gone. And he had his slick back hair, and he was really friendly and cool. You know, I saw him last at UCLA. Gosh, time has flown. The summer before the shutdown, and we talked briefly. Mostly, I was talking to someone who was with him. But he's a legend, an LA legend and a basketball legend. And certainly a legend in Miami. They call him the Godfather for a reason. So, but I got to go. The answer to the question is Phil Jackson, who I learned tremendous wisdom from throughout my career, and just in life, and how to approach things and live in the moment. If I learned anything from Phil Jackson, truly work to live in the moment. Not an easy thing to do, but something that I try to aspire to anyway.
Right, and we're getting great comments from the audience. Bhushan saying that Eric Pincus added that LA spice to the show. So we're getting a lot of great audience comments. It looks like Bhushan agrees with you, Eric, that Phil Jackson is the better coach. We got to ask you one last question. This is an Indian talk show. So what is your favorite Indian food?
So I'll say that my wife loves Indian food. And so she's brought that into our home, whereas I was pretty ignorant of it growing up. She regularly gets like samosas, and curry is certainly something that we'll have on occasion. I like naan and masala dosa. Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
It's probably terrible. Tandoori chicken's probably a very Americanized version of. There's an Indian spice market. I forget the exact name. Indian. I forget. It's right on. It's on Venice, if you know Los Angeles, Venice, and right by Main Street in Culver City. And I go there. Mostly, I go there to get okra for my wife. She cooks up okra, and they have it in a bin, and I just get a bag full, and she cooks that up. But I get her a lot of takeout there, and get something for myself as well. So I don't want to say I'm the most. If you got her on, she would be able to really, knock it out. I'm adventurous, willing to try almost anything, and certainly enjoy when we go get some Indian food.
There's a lot of good food in LA, so you can't go wrong with wherever you go. LA is known for its excellent food. So, and a lot of the audience is saying, you nailed it with masala dosa, samosa, naan. So pretty good choices there, Eric.
Thank you. I did my best. The samosas are pretty regular in the house. So that's like the most common one. Every few weeks or so, my wife will either pick some up or we'll get some over at, they have some frozen ones at the market, but she'll go get some fresh from, when we can in a normal life. We don't get them as much. We get the frozen kind now and more often than actually going to the market or going to the restaurant or whatever. So, making the best we can. But for sure.
Yeah. The only thing I can say at the end is if the Lakers are coming to India, you got to come with them so that we can. I can treat you to some real Indian food in Mumbai.
I would love to. Honestly, I've never left America. It's one of the things that I set off to do later in my life because I was always working and doing what I do with the NBA and in the NBA field and raising children. So obviously right now I can't travel, but my wife and I certainly have plans as our kids start to grow up and get off to college. Our oldest is going to go to college soon. So India would be a treat to go to. So put it on the list. We'll sit down. We'll have a nice meal. You'll show me around town, and I look forward to it.
We'll make it happen. We'll make it happen, Eric, for sure. After this all COVID stuff is over, we'll
Yes,
do it
sir.
for sure.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being on our show. It was a great honor for us. And of course, you can see from the fans' comments that, people read your articles, but they finally could put a face, to that name. So thank you so much for being on our
Of course,
show tonight.
guys. You got a backstage look at my setup. This is what it looks like usually when I do my streams. There's I've got actually it's Oracle Arena is usually the backdrop I have, but it's nice. It's 8 a.m, which is kind of early for me, but to jump on with you guys was an honor and a pleasure. And I know basketball's basketball. If you love basketball and you're in India or anywhere on this earth, you've got good taste. So I hope to join you one day in India and just see the country. I've heard wonderful things, and I know it's going to happen eventually. We'll get back to normal, and I'll get out there. We'll sit down and have a nice some naan, and I don't know what kind of beverages, what you would call them, but we'll have a nice beverage.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, and excited to see you in India. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time, Eric, and best of luck this entire season. Thank you. Thank you. Well, Mr. Kumar, what a great conversation we had with Eric Pincus. We covered a lot from his time covering the Lakers, his favorite memories. We even did a little rapid fire. And I was impressed, Mr. Kumar. He had some pretty good food selections there.
Yeah, absolutely, and he pretty much nailed it with the pronunciations and everything. So there's water in my mouth hearing all those things, because it's dinner time now, and I just feel like gorging on some of those items.
Oh man, he was making me hungry for sure, Mr. Kumar, with all the delicious food that he was said. But again, thank you, Eric, and thank you again, everybody, for all the comments you had, for during the Eric Pincus section. And Joel saying, "Sir Eric, really happy to see you. Continue to say hi to me." So thank you, Joel, and everybody again for watching this episode. Of the Patel and Kumar show. And Bhushan is also saying thanks a ton, Eric Pincus. But thank you, everybody, for watching the show. And we'll be back February 11th for another episode of the Patel and Kumar show. And there's a lot more basketball to be played. But until then, everybody continue to stay safe and healthy. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you. And we just forgot to give you two news, which is that, of course, wanted to cover that, but we will cover next episode, is Anita Paul Duray, who has received the Padma Shri Award, which is probably one of the highest civilian awards. NBA India, just made an announcement of tying up with Prasar Bharati, the government media channel, Doordarshan, and they are once again. There is no NBA games yet, and the only place to see that is on the NBA League. So once again, please comment and subscribe to the Ekalavyas YouTube channel, the Patel Pick and Roll Sports YouTube channel, and of course, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Patel and Kumar. So thank you very much for being here tonight. Thank you to Eric Pincus for bringing all the inside information. Patel, thank you very much for a host.
Thank you, Mr. Kumar. Yep, thank you again, Mr. Lakers, come to India! Lakers, come to India!